She caught him cheating, in the same kitchen where she'd made him breakfast for 10 years. Her cousin on the counter, his shirt half-buttoned, no shame in his eyes. Rick didn't flinch. He didn't look ashamed. He just met her eyes and said, cold as steel, "We're not in love anymore." The smell of coffee hung in the air, heavy and bitter. For a moment, time froze. The clock ticked, the refrigerator hummed, and her whole life shattered in perfect silence. Marisa didn't scream. She didn't beg. She simply stood there, the knife still in her hand, realizing that the man she had built her world around was already a stranger. He walked out of the kitchen like it was nothing. 10 years, gone in a single breath. The warmth that once lived in that room turned to frost, and yet, somewhere beneath the shock, something inside her refused to break. A quiet voice whispered, "You will remember this day, but not with tears," because the woman he just left behind was about to become someone neither of them would ever forget. If you've ever stood in silence when your world fell apart, stay. This story was written for you. By noon, the coffee had gone cold, but the shock hadn't. Marisa had spent a decade perfecting a life that looked like a magazine spread. Fresh flowers on Fridays. She believed in rituals, in effort, in love sustained by small, faithful things. That morning told her those things had meant nothing to him. Rick loved to joke that he had married the most reliable woman in Charlotte. Reliable became invisible. It was the way she smoothed his collars, remembered bored dinners, and swallowed sharp words until they dissolved in her throat. She had curated harmony like a craft. Now the mirror gave back a stranger she could not protect. She washed the cup because hands needed a task. She sat at the table they had chosen together. In the silence, old hopes began to ache like bruises. Pride cracked. She told herself to breathe. She told herself to sit up. Somewhere in the other room, a phone buzzed against wood. A small sound, sharp as a pin, nudging her toward a truth she did not want. She followed the sound to the hall table. Rick's phone lay there, face up, buzzing again. A preview slid across the screen. "Can't wait for Friday. XOXO. Then the name appeared. Tessa. Tessa Green, her younger cousin. The girl she tutored through algebra. The woman she brought into Cole and Haven as an assistant, vouching for her when no one else would. Holiday dinners, inside jokes. Every memory rewound in one lurching heartbeat. The room tilted. The word family bent into something sharp. She didn't open the phone. She didn't need to. Patterns she had ignored lit up like runway lights. Late nights. New perfume wasn't hers. Tessa's praise about Rick's brilliance. "You're so lucky, Marisa." Luck, it seemed, had been a costume. Marisa set the phone down with care, as if it might explode. She stood still, breathing through the weight settling on her chest. When Rick came inside, she looked at him and asked the question that mattered. "Is there someone else?" He held her gaze. Silence answered first. Then the truth arrived, wearing her cousin's face. He chose lawyer words first. "We've grown apart. It happens." Marisa heard the cadence of a man who had practiced in the mirror. She asked when it started. He stared past her shoulder. She asked if it was Tessa. His silence did not blink. The truth didn't need verbs. It sat between them like a third chair. The next afternoon, Tessa arrived, posture set for victory. She spoke of a connection Marisa could never understand. She called it cosmic. Marisa watched her cousin's mouth form new vows over old debts of gratitude. Grief narrowed into something cool. She thought about birthdays and keys she had pressed into Tessa's palm. She let the words float to the ceiling and die there. The divorce moved fast. Rick's attorneys drew hard lines. Assets were arcane, layered, out of reach. She took the house and a settlement that felt like loose change beside his worth. She signed in a room that smelled like toner and coffee. No speech, no tears, only a steady hand. Outside, Charlotte kept moving, and rumors ran ahead of her. Charlotte loved a success story. The city wrote one for Rick and Tessa overnight. There were glossy photos from a rooftop party. captions about fresh starts and brave love. Colleagues called them a power couple. The chamber newsletter praised his leadership. Comments piled up like confetti. Marisa learned the new script in the produce aisle, at church doors, on group texts that arrived by mistake. People hugged too long. People whispered, "You're so strong," the way someone talks to a widow. A neighbor asked if she planned to keep the house, then circled back to ask the price of her listing agent. She smiled until her face ached. Pride bled where no one could see. At night, she scrolled through their feed. Bali, a G-Wagon, charity checks held up for cameras. Every image told her who she had become, a lesson, a caution, a woman who couldn't keep her man. She closed the app and stared at the kitchen door, still expecting a familiar key to turn. The lock stayed quiet. The house listened with her and grew colder. Nights stretched long inside the house that used to hold laughter. The refrigerator hummed like a low lament. The breakfast nook felt abandoned, as if the sunlight itself had moved out. Marisa moved quietly from room to room, dusting frames she could not bring herself to box. The bed was made with care. The other pillow stayed untouched. She kept to simple tasks. Fold the towels, water the fern, count the medicine bottles in the cabinet. Silence pressed against her ribs. Sometimes she thought she heard the garage door, the old rhythm of return, and then remembered. The mind plays tricks when it misses a pattern. She tried to pray but found only breath. Words would not form. She sat at the kitchen table and traced the wood grain with her thumb. She did not make promises to herself. She did not plan yet. Survival came first. Eat, sleep a little, show up for one more day. The house held their history like a mausoleum, but there, in the echo, a softer truth waited. She was still here. Work thinned, then stalled. Clients rescheduled and never came back. A builder delayed payment. A supplier cut her line of credit. Rent invoices stacked like quiet threats on the entry table. The numbers did not lie. Money bled fast when the phone stopped ringing. She sold pieces she no longer needed. The crystal set, the spare bar stools. She picked up smaller jobs, staging bland apartments for quick sales. Pride stung, yet her hands remembered their craft. Color calmed her. Order gave her back a little air. Emails to past clients were short and gracious. Some replied. Most didn't. She adjusted her budget and stopped measuring herself against anyone's timeline. She wrote 3 words on a sticky note and pressed it to the fridge. Learn, save, wait. In the ash, something stubborn flickered. Not rage, not drama. Will. The part of her that built a life once could build again. She opened her old project files and studied what had worked. She cut what had not. She would not chase applause. She would rebuild substance inch by inch. Time moved without announcements. Marisa took evening courses in materials and lighting. She learned the new software. She met 2 clients through a friend who trusted her eye. The jobs were quiet, paid on time, and spread by whispers rather than posts. She woke early, walked the neighborhood, and let the rhythm empty her head. She cooked simple meals. She called her mother more. She stopped checking Rick and Tessa's feed, then stopped thinking about it, and then forgot the password altogether. Silence hardened, not into bitterness, but into a kind of armor. When fear whispered you are behind, she answered with routine. Answer emails by 9, sketch by noon, invoice by 3. Nothing glamorous, everything steady. The house felt less haunted when the table held fabric samples again. She said little about the past. Friends learned not to pry. The city kept living, and so did she. 2 years did not heal everything, but they made space. In that space, she began to feel the outline of herself returning, clear and unhurried. On a wet Tuesday, she climbed into the attic to find an old lamp. A box split under her hands and a leather journal slid free. Business school notes, budgets, a younger handwriting, crisp with intention. Between case studies, a line was underlined twice. The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. Marcus Aurelius. She read it again. The attic smelled of dust and cedar. Memory softened its grip. The quote did not erase the hurt. It reframed it. Hot anger burns fast and leaves smoke. Cold clarity holds shape. She felt the difference like a steadying hand on her back. She carried the journal downstairs and set it on the table. She made tea instead of coffee. She did not plot in fury. She looked at facts. What did she know about Rick? About his pride, his appetite for praise, his shortcuts dressed up as genius? The pain did not vanish. It cooled. In the cooling, strategy could breathe. The past had taken much. It would not take her judgment. Marisa opened a fresh page and drew 3 columns. Phase 1. Vanish with grace. No scenes. No noise. Let the city believe she had moved on. Phase 2. Learn their world. Understand the currents Rick swam in and the habits that steered him. Phase 3. Apply pressure where their own choices would break them. No fingerprints she could not live with. She listed rules. Never act angry. Never lie. Document everything. Give truth a clean path. She was not chasing spectacle. She wanted an ending that matched the damage. Precise, undeniable, and earned. She tested the plan against her values. Did it protect her peace? Did it protect her company? Did it keep her dignity intact? Each question mattered more than speed. When she closed the journal, the kitchen felt different. Not warm yet, but ordered. The same room where a sentence had ended her marriage would host the beginning of something steadier. She sharpened a pencil. She dated the page. She was done being a cautionary tale. The blueprint was set. She put the house on the market with a discreet agent. It sold above asking in 6 days. She packed steadily, choosing what to keep and what to release. Wedding china went to a consignment shop. Photo frames went into a single, plain box. She signed closing papers and did not look back at the porch light. The new apartment was smaller, higher, and full of afternoon sun. She changed her number. She trimmed her calendar to clients who valued quiet over spectacle. Then she sent a tasteful card to a local charity Rick disliked. Inside was a donation made in honor of Rick and Tessa. The director sent a public thank you post. Friends texted her heart emojis. Proud of your growth. So happy you've moved on. The city believed the signal. So did they. Marisa let the story breathe without her. No speeches, no hints. She watered the new fern and learned the view of the skyline at night. Disappearance was not defeat. It was design. She had made space, and space was the first tool. Work returned like rain after a dry season. One client referred another. A banker's wife, a pediatric surgeon, a retired judge. They wanted calm rooms and honest invoices. Marisa delivered both. Cole and Haven began to mean restraint, light, and rooms that felt like exhale. She reworked her pricing. She built retainers and staged payments that protected cash flow. She hired a bookkeeper on Thursdays. She stopped discounting to please anyone. The margins grew. Vendors took her calls first. Her name appeared in a neighborhood glossy, tucked between garden tours and a poetry reading. No one connected her to Rick Cole. The city had moved on to other romances, other rumors. She let that anonymity cover her like a soft coat. Money steadied. Pride, the clean kind, returned to her posture. She was not a cautionary tale. She was a business owner with a wait list. At night, she balanced accounts and slept. In the morning, she chose fabrics and function. The work did not fix the past. It did something better. It funded her future. When the books were healthy and her breath was even, she made one call. A private investigator met her over coffee and questions. She did not offer a motive. She offered facts. Names, dates, habits. He nodded like a man who had seen this pattern before and began to pull thread. Reports arrived in clean folders. Rick favored leverage. He dressed risk as brilliance. He took bonuses when bets landed and left clients exposed when they didn't. He loved complex structures that looked innovative and smelled like shortcuts. A regulator had asked a question last quarter. The firm had produced a blizzard of paper. Marisa read each line without hurry. She underlined arrogance more than any number. Pride was predictable. Pride left fingerprints on everything it touched. She did not cheer. She noted. Phase 2 was not a battering ram. It was a study. Understand the current. Map the rocks beneath the surface. She closed the folder and dated the margin. The tide would shift soon. She wanted to know exactly when. The investigator widened the lens. He followed bank patterns and weekend routes. Cash withdrawals bloomed in neat, alarming rows. A loyalty card pinged at a casino 2 hours away. Private rooms. Late returns. The name Tessa appeared on a discreet guest list more than once. It fit too easily. In college, she had flirted with poker nights and lost rent once. Marisa had paid it then, telling her to be careful with the thrill that feels like love. Years later, the thrill had learned new tricks. Debt crept behind the photos Tessa posted in perfect light. The report included dates and totals, not gossip, evidence. Marisa closed the folder and exhaled through her nose. It was not joy. It was recognition. People do not become other people. They become more of themselves. A weakness had stepped into the open and asked to be used. Marisa did not move yet. She let the knowledge settle the way cold glass settles on a table. Still, unbreakable. Ready. The email arrived on a Monday morning. Hayes and Partners wanted a proposal for their flagship office refresh. The firm was Old Charlotte. Polished wood, precise manners. Marisa sent a clean deck and a fair bid. 2 days later, she sat across from Robert Hayes, the senior partner with winter-gray eyes and a careful way of listening. He asked about timelines. He asked about value, not just finishes. She answered plainly. He chose her without a second meeting. The scope was significant. It would anchor her year and raise her profile among clients who never needed to brag. During a walkthrough, he mentioned his wealth manager. Too aggressive, too opaque. Marisa kept her face still. Westbridge Wealth, Rick's house. The note landed and stayed there, quiet as a business card slid under a door. Opportunity does not always look like a stage. Sometimes it looks like a contract and a set of keys. She shook Robert's hand and thanked him. On the drive home, she said the words aloud. Phase 2 is in motion. Robert walked the corridor with a floor plan in hand. He asked about timelines, vendors, contingencies. Marisa answered cleanly. When they paused by the conference room, he sighed about money managers who loved gloss and hid the fine print. Westbridge came up without names. The air tightened and then went still. Marisa kept her voice low. Off the record, Robert. Trust your instincts. She offered no accusations, no stories. Only that one sentence, steady as a level on a shelf. He studied her for a long beat. Character mattered to him more than promises. He nodded once. The nod wasn't polite. It was a decision forming. Later that day, he emailed his controller and asked for a quiet review. No alarms, no gossip. Marisa returned to her car and sat with both hands on the wheel. She did not feel triumph. She felt the click of a piece sliding into place. Seeds do not announce themselves when they enter the soil. They simply disappear and begin. That night, Robert pulled his own statements and highlighted what nagged. Aggressive allocations. Explanations that read like smoke. He marked a date on his calendar and slept lightly. The message arrived on an encrypted app Tessa used for party lists. Private game. Invite only. Strict door. The host promised a soft table and high stakes. The photo was all velvet and gold light. It pulsed at the edge of her screen like a dare. She told herself it was networking. She told herself she deserved a night. 2 hours later, she slid into a booth near a green felt table and felt the rush she knew too well. Luck flirted with her, then left. Hands bled chips. She took a cash advance and promised herself one more orbit. By midnight, she was chasing losses the way a swimmer chases air. The room blurred. The dealer's voice stayed calm. She signed a marker with a practiced hand and told herself she would win it back next week. The drive home was quiet except for the sound of rationalizing. She opened a secret card the next morning. "Another cushion," she said. She hid the envelope behind a stack of scarves. She posted a brunch photo in perfect light and did not tag the location. The debt began to hum in the walls. The bank alerts hit first. Rick scrolled, jaw tight. "What is this?" He held up a balance transfer like an accusation. Tessa blamed a vendor, a friend, a misunderstanding. He knew better. The fight moved from the kitchen to the car to a text thread that lost words and gained heat. Their feed slowed. Captions shrank. Photos looked staged and thin, as if the light itself were bored. Friends noticed the silence and filled it with guesses. Tessa deleted comments that asked too much. Across town, Robert began his review. He asked Westbridge for allocation memos and risk notes. He wanted performance against benchmarks, not headlines. The requests were crisp and polite. They were also relentless. Rick's team sent binders that looked heavy and answered little. A compliance officer asked for time. Robert replied with deadlines. Marisa worked her scope, measured elevations, and kept her phone face down. She did not chase updates. She didn't need to. Pressure had a way of finding its own angles. At night, Tessa stared at the ceiling and counted interest like sheep. Rick called Robert old school in a meeting he thought was private. He told his staff that clients like that always flinched when markets breathed. He talked about his track record until the room went quiet. Someone suggested bringing in outside counsel to review the requests. He waved it off and laughed. He told the trading desk to stay the course. He leaned harder into positions he swore would vindicate him. He sent an email with a line that landed like a dare. "We don't take direction from fear." He CC'd enough people to make it theater. Hubris is loud. It drowns out the tiny noises that warn of leaks. A junior analyst flagged inconsistencies between statements and custodial reports. Rick called it timing. He told the analyst to learn how the grown-ups do it. The kid nodded and saved a copy to a personal drive. At home, Tessa asked for help with a short-term situation. Rick didn't ask how short. He transferred funds and told her to get control. He felt magnanimous. He did not notice the ground settling under his feet. The investigator's report arrived in a slim, quiet envelope. Inside were dates, transfers, and the outlines of a pattern no one could mistake. Money from a hands-off client had been pushed into a fragile startup that stalled. The shortfall was covered, briefly, by redirecting funds from other clients without clear consent. The paper trail looped like a snake eating its tail. Emails showed bonuses taken when bets looked good on paper. Disclosures read like fog. Reconciliations leaned on timing. None of it screamed. Together, it sang one song. Marisa read every page. She marked what mattered. She skipped the noise. She built a timeline with clean lines and clipped citations. No color, no adjectives. Truth did not need decoration. She did not send it to the police. Not yet. Direct lines can point back. She did not send it to Robert. He already had a process. She thought of the client whose money had been used like putty, a person powerful enough to move mountains with a phone call. When she closed the folder, the room felt heavier and clearer at once. She had the weapon. Now she would choose the hand. She did not rush. She checked the timeline once more, clipped the exhibits, and sealed the envelope without a return address. Inside lay clean facts and dates that fit together like teeth. She addressed it to the family office of the hands-off client whose money had been used like putty and sent it by courier with signature required. Then came waiting. She answered emails. She chose tile samples. She made soup and ate it standing up. The apartment hummed, steady and small. No one called. No alarms sounded. Suspense can be quiet when it is working. 2 days later, an automated notice confirmed delivery. No name, just a timestamp. She put her phone face down and watered the fern. She knew better than to expect thunder at once. Power often moves in whispers before it moves the earth. That night she slept with the window cracked. A cool draft passed over her collarbone and settled her. She had not thrown a punch. She had simply placed the truth where it could not be ignored. The rest would come on its own clock. The first tremor hit the business pages before dawn. Prominent financial partner under investigation for client fund misallocation. By noon, 3 outlets had it, each quoting unnamed sources and a terse firm statement about cooperation. Phones lit up across Charlotte like a storm map. Robert Hayes read the article twice, then called a board meeting and voted to move his entire portfolio. He released a sentence that sounded like steel wrapped in velvet. Other clients followed the tone, if not the words. Redemptions spiked. The firm's stock sagged, then slipped, then dropped through a floor no one had planned for. Inside Westbridge, conference rooms filled with lawyers and air that smelled of toner and panic. A regulator arrived with a notebook, not a smile. Rick was placed on leave in an email that blurred his name with the firm's logo. His keycard clicked red by evening. Marisa did not refresh the feed. News travels whether you chase it or not. She invoiced a milestone on the Hayes project and filed the receipt. The sound of falling, once terrifying, now read like balance. When the accounts froze, the calls changed tone. Friendly reminders became sharp deadlines. The casino marker matured into a threat with a schedule. Interest climbed like ivy up a wall. Tessa tried charm, apology, denial. None of it moved the numbers. Friends who loved rooftop photos went quiet. A stylist canceled, then blocked. A boutique declined a return without a receipt. The charity set lost patience with whispers they couldn't contain. She sold a bag she had tagged as investment. The shop owner counted cash with merciless care and offered less than half. At home, she rehearsed a story about a temporary squeeze. Rick listened with a lawyer's face and said he had his own issues to manage. He transferred a token amount and suggested she cut expenses. She smiled until he left the room and then broke the smile in her hands. Night stretched long. She checked doors twice. She jumped at unknown numbers. The world she had climbed into like a glass slipper had turned brittle. Every step now threatened a crack. Justice, when it arrived, did not knock. It seeped. She read one headline at breakfast and closed the app. She did not forward it. She sent her team a simple note. Good work, keep pace, protect our standards. She moved through the day as if each task were a stone in a path. Steady, placed, enough. The apartment felt calm for the first time since she moved in. She wiped the counters. She ironed swatches for a client who preferred linen to gloss. She called her mother and spoke about herbs on the balcony. They did not say his name. A friend texted a link with 3 exclamation points. Marisa replied with a heart and the words, "I'm okay." It was true, not happy, not vindictive. Okay. The temperature inside her had cooled to something livable. That evening, she opened the journal and added one line beneath the plan. Do not gloat. Keep faith with yourself. She poured tea and watched the skyline turn to sequins, then to ash, then to dark. Peace does not make noise. It sits beside you and breathes. The envelope was heavy and white, embossed with a tiny balloon. The Children's Hospital Gala. She had attended once, long ago, on Rick's arm. She read the date, the theme, the suggested attire. She knew without checking that Westbridge tables had been purchased months before. She knew they would still be filled. Marisa placed the card on the counter and looked at it as if it were a compass. She did not picture speeches or revenge. She pictured closure that felt clean on the skin. One room, one night. The story making a circle and then letting go. She bought a single ticket. She blocked the evening on her calendar as if it were any other deliverable. She confirmed installation dates for Hayes and Partners. She set automatic payments for the utilities. Ordinary order steadied her hands. In the city pages, a columnist listed expected attendees and sponsors. Names moved past her eyes like slow birds. She did not flinch. Some endings ask for quiet witnesses. Some require a stage. This one, she decided, would have both. The ballroom breathed in and looked at her. Marisa stepped through the doorway in a black dress that fit like certainty. Heads turned. A murmur traveled table to table. Some people searched their memory for a headline. Others simply stared at the woman who had chosen stillness over noise. She did not hurry. She greeted two donors she knew from past projects. She smiled at a nurse who thanked her for a family room renovation. Her presence said what words could not. She was not a rumor. She was a life. Rick saw her first in the mirrored edge of a server's tray. His shoulders tightened. Tessa followed his gaze and smoothed her dress with a shaking hand. Their table mates pretended not to watch. Marisa accepted a glass of water. She stood near a display of children's drawings and studied the colors. Quiet gathered around her like a tide. No posture for revenge, no show. Only a woman who had survived the cold and learned how to carry it without frostbite. In that quiet, her name changed meaning. Not victim, not ex, Marisa Cole. They crossed the room because they had to. Politeness demanded it. Reputation required it. Rick reached her first, voice low. "You look well." It sounded like a line borrowed from a stranger. Tessa leaned in and let the words slip, small and poisonous. "You did this." Marisa met her eyes. "No." A breath. "You did." The sentence landed without heat, and yet it burned. Rick tried a legal tone. "There's a media storm, false narratives. We will address them." "Address the facts," Marisa said. Her voice was even. "They are not difficult to find." Tessa's mouth tightened. "You think you won?" Marisa shook her head once. "I chose peace. That isn't winning. That's healing." Silence widened. The room kept moving, but a small circle stilled around them. Rick's gaze slid away. Tessa stared at the floor as if it might offer terms. Marisa did not fill the quiet. She did not reach for kindness that was no longer hers to give. A donor passed and nodded to Marisa with respect that made Rick flinch. The truth had taken a body. It stood between them, undeniable. Robert Hayes approached with an ease that carried weight. "Ms. Cole," he said, warm and formal at once, "your work on our offices is superb. Our staff feels it already." He turned slightly, inviting the room to listen without asking. "Integrity shows up in the details." A few heads tilted. A photographer hovered and then thought better of it. Robert kept going. "We value partners who tell the truth, who make things better rather than louder." He lifted his glass to her. It was not a toast, it was recognition. Rick's jaw set. Tessa's fingers tightened around her clutch. Around them, conversation shifted. People who had played neutral recalibrated in real time. Respect changed tables with a soft, audible scrape. Marisa thanked Robert and moved the praise back to the hospital. "The children are why we're here." The sentence landed clean and stayed. It said enough. Later, the event program listed sponsors and honorees. No one applauded a scandal. They applauded a woman who had refused to be defined by one. The room understood the order of things again. Near the end of the night, Marisa stepped toward the exit. The music softened. The air felt cooler near the doors. She did not look for them. She did not look back. Closure did not need witnesses. It needed a spine and a steady breath. Outside, the city lights held their quiet positions. A valet called a car. She thanked him and stood under a sky that had room for everything and judged nothing. Her phone stayed asleep in her bag. No photos, no posts. Some victories belong to the heart alone. She thought of the kitchen where a sentence ended 10 years. She thought of the apartment where a plan began. She thought of the journal and the rules she had written in clean lines. Never act angry, never lie. Protect your peace. The car pulled up. She got in and closed the door with care. The night folded around her like a calm. The gala kept shimmering behind her. The past kept its stories. She kept herself. Weeks later, the office at Hayes & Partners opened. Clients walked into rooms that felt like breath after rain. Cole and Haven signed 2 new projects and a quiet, steady third. The books balanced. The phone rang for the right reasons. Marisa spoke little about the case that had made noise. She spoke often about the work that made meaning. She learned the names of the hospital's volunteers. She sent a check without her name on it. She cooked again in a kitchen that did not hold ghosts. In her journal, she wrote, "Forgiveness isn't forgetting, it's choosing peace over poison." She underlined peace, then closed the book and went for a walk. This is what she would tell anyone standing in ash. "You are not weak for loving well. You are strong for refusing to let betrayal rewrite you. Build what is yours. Let the truth do the rest." If this story reached you, share it with a woman who is rebuilding her strength. Subscribe to hear more journeys of pain turned into power.